This is Beyond the Bench with Nick Morgasen and Nick Fodera. A look at sports and pop culture from beyond common sense. The show that constantly goes off the rails and might never get back on. When you don't belong, you're a bench warmer. On this show, there's no riding the bench. This is Beyond the Bench on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Welcome, everybody, to Beyond the Bench on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. This is a special bonus interview that I did because Nick and I are done with episodes until next year. But before we get into that, follow the show on social media, follow on Twitter at Beyond the Bench 1, follow on Facebook, facebook.com/Beyond the Bench 1, and follow Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network. So, I did an amazing interview that you're going to see coming up in just about a minute or so, or a couple minutes, depending on when this gets done. I spoke with comedian Bob Levy. Now, you might know this name from the Howard Stern show. You might know him just as a comedian. Very, very funny comedian, in my opinion, and got a raw deal when, unfortunately, he was off the Howard Stern show. But in this great interview, we get to talk about his role on The Stern Show. We get to talk about the character he played, the role he played. He told us about how there was too many cooks in the kitchen. There was a lot of comedians involved in the show. And how comedians get their value from being on the Howard Stern Show. We talked about some funny moments. We talked about the boxing match that he had with Danny Bonaducci. You could hear him laughing because that was just a funny moment on the show. We also get into Miserable Men, which is a show that is still continued from when it started at Sirius with another one of the great guys from Howard Stern show when he was still there, Shuli. And they've moved that show over to Patreon after that show started as a 1-hour show on Sirius, expanded to 4 hours, and now it's a Patreon show. It's a great show. Please go and listen to that as well. Also, go check out his show Levyland on YouTube. Very, very funny show as well, where they basically shoot the shit and talk life. It's a great show. And then we get into a lot of other things. We get into cancel culture. We also get into podcasting. What's it been like being at home since the COVID-19 pandemic? How he was supposed to travel. We get into a lot of things. So sit back, relax. We do roughly close to a 40-minute interview. So you're going to get a lot of laughs, a lot of interesting behind the scenes of what went on at the Stern Show from his perspective, obviously, and just sit back. You are going to love this. So here we go. Comedian Bob Levy on this bonus edition. I wouldn't call it an episode. It's a bonus interview on Beyond the Bench on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Hopefully everyone has a happy new year, and Nick Fodera and myself will be back for episode 12 in a new year. Enjoy. Joining me now on Beyond the Bench, and you might know this guy from a lot of different things. He's a comedian. He's on a radio show, which we'll talk about, not for the whole thing, but for a small amount of time. And we'll talk about some other things as well. He's got his show Levyland on YouTube, Miserable Men on Patreon. He's doing stand-up at Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club from January 5th to January 8th. And on New Year's Eve, he'll be at McGuire's Comedy Club in Long Island. Follow him on Twitter at Levy_Sir. Bob Levy. Bob, thanks for joining me.
Hey, pleasure to be here, buddy.
So, a lot to get into now. Mm-hmm. I'm from the radio game. I've been in radio for about 4 years-ish in New York radio. Cool. So, I understand kind of what's been going on in the radio game. But I'm curious. We'll go back a little bit and then we'll go forward. Mm-hmm. But how have you been during COVID, first of all? Let me ask that.
Well, I've been fine. I mean, I don't know what's going on. You know, it's weird. It's like, I like to stay home. So it was good the first year. But now it's like crazy. Like I heard like all these flights are getting canceled. I'm supposed to go to L.A., California, and then Arizona. And if I miss one flight, there's the week. I'm not going, I'm not trying to get on a flight the next day. So
I mean, so what do you think about all the mandates? Are you for the mandates, against the mandates? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm against them. I mean, it's like there's nothing you can do. If you look, if you let somebody piss in your face, you know what I mean? You basically have to deal with it. You know what I mean? And that's what we let China do. So basically, hey, we got to live.
So you've been able to do some gigs or partial scheduling. How have you been doing with the gigs with this
I mean,
COVID?
nothing got nothing got COVID, nothing got canceled this time, like from COVID yet. But I can see it coming. I see it. I see by February that a lot of they're gonna make people. It's just they're just gonna ruin it again. They're gonna ruin it for people that want to go out and live and not die. I mean, if I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna die like a coward under my bed. So sorry, I'm not that much of a bitch.
I mean, you've been able to do podcasts and YouTube shows and Patreon shows, so you've been able to keep yourself busy, right? In the meantime, so at
Well, yeah,
least
and that's
you
the
don't
whole
feel like
thing.
you have to sit. Yeah.
And the whole thing is that the people needed something. The people needed something to basically. They were just sitting at home. They weren't enjoying themselves, so it helped to go out there. Let me tell this dog to shut up. Yeah.
No, I was just saying. So at least you have stuff to do in the meantime while you're
Yeah, I
not
mean,
able to travel as much.
yeah, I mean, I don't like, you know what I mean? I'm lazy, so it was good. It really wasn't as bad as, I mean, if I was a kid, I'd be going crazy. You know what I mean? It's messing up so many kids. I mean, the suicide thing has jumped up for teenagers like to over 50% or something like that. I read something about that. It's just insane because you're going to tell a kid to stay in the house.
No, it makes sense, and it's just I guess we'll all get through it at some point, one way or another. But
Yeah.
let's jump into something I find interesting. The show you used to work on,
Hmm.
so the Stern Show, the Howard Stern Show.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? And I think I've talked to some people already from the show who have had different opinions of it. What
Hmm.
do you think of the show now as opposed to when you were on it?
It's totally different. I can say that. It has the moments of the past, but I mean, to me, like I haven't listened for years, and then I started listening when I take my wife to work in the morning, and I mean, I can listen to it and enjoy it, but it's not the same. Totally not the same. It's not even close to the same. Even like the new names for people, like Gary the Conqueror or something. I mean, I don't get it. He was a retard when I was there.
No, it makes sense. And then just seeing some people
Mm-hmm.
getting canceled left and right. Now, I'll get into that later because
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of getting frustrated with cancel culture and all that
Oh no.
nonsense. But I felt like when you were on the show and Gilbert was on the show and a bunch of other people were on the show, I felt like it had a presence for comedy. It
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
like it was a much more open show, willing to do more things, going to reach avenues that you couldn't reach. Now I feel like you not being there, Gilbert not being there, other people not being there. I feel like they kind of turned it. I don't know if I want to call it censored or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you call it at this point?
I think it's toting the line to be what he kind of believes in now, and it comes off that way. It's like if you said to me, if I never seen anything about Howard and I watched him now, and then you told me stories about what they used to do on there, I would be like, "There's no way." But hey, man, whatever. I mean, like to me, it's not my cup of tea, but I can still listen to it and go, it's better than any morning show that I can hear on regular radio, basically. So, I mean, but it's a difference. It's totally changed. There was no comparison to what is what it was back then and what it is now. It's different.
So, and I started to bring this up to you before we started doing
Hmm.
this interview, but I spoke to a guy named Scott King from Forbes who's
Hmm.
been covering the Jim and Sam contract negotiations, which we all know far too well with the Howard and contract negotiations with all that stuff.
Yeah.
He brought up to me that guys like you not being there and Florentine and all those guys that really brought a presence, even though Howard is a name, but the comedian brought a presence to the show. And he said that you not being there and others was a big thing. Were the comedians really the driving force for the show, or were the comedians looking to get on there to get a presence?
It was to get a presence, you know what I mean? And Howard was really good to us with that, you know, basically, you know, he let me do a lot of stuff up there. I did more than just going up as a comedian. And it was amazing, you know, it was an amazing time. But then too many people started to come in and be in charge, and that's bad when that starts happening. And that's when I kind of that was the end of me there, you know.
I mean, when you kind of, I don't know your whole situation. I don't want to bring up all the craziness again, because sometimes people don't like bringing up their situations. But when you go out the door and other people eventually going out the door. Now he had other issues and other situations, but do you feel like the uncensored culture that the show was known for back in the day is fizzled out?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely fizzled out. I mean, this is just like I said, I hear some moments where I'm like, okay, I can hear Ronnie yelling and then going blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, here it comes. This is it. This is what, you know. Everything started with something happened outside the studio, and it got brought in, and they talked to Howard on the commercial, and fucking boom, it was crazy.
So when you played, now I don't know if this was a character or a bit, when you would come on and they would have you do the spelling stuff or the math stuff, was that a bit or a joke, or was there some realness to that? What was that?
There's definitely some realness to it, put it that way. Like when I first say a word and I don't know it, I really don't know it. You know what I mean? I can catch on after a while. You know, that was like, I thought it was dragged on a little too much. And I was like, okay, let's move on to something else. I can do many things, you know, but it was funny. I knew you kind of knew what he liked, you know?
And then one of my favorite moments of the time. Now, I didn't catch the show many years in the beginning, but I watch a lot of the YouTube videos where I saw you guys on there and a lot of that. When they talked about the boxing match. Now, the boxing match was probably one of the funniest things for me in that regard. Did you really get into doing that boxing match, or was that more of a show wanting you to do type of thing?
It was a show, you know, it was a show. It was like, you know, I mean, it was, you know what I mean? I did it because I thought it was a good cause or whatever it was supposed to be. And then it's just great radio. But that was the only time I ever lied to Howard. And I felt bad because I wouldn't swear on my son. And I ended up swearing on my wife at the time, on her life. And, you know, really, it was like, you know, the slap was all fake and everything, you know, whatever, it's acting, you know. It's like I took wrestling, so I knew I can get thrown around by big bounces, and we didn't tell them because I said, this fucking, you know, just do it, don't tell them.
I just couldn't believe how, well, just seeing that interaction in the studio between you and him, I was like, I could tell what you're saying now, that it was very WWE-ish, wrestling-ish type promotion.
Yeah, if you look back at it now and you don't understand it, because I'm sure we were just talking normally when we were out, you know, it's just, but that wasn't the show. I'm not like, I was mad because that wasn't the show. There wasn't fake stuff on the show, really. You know what I mean? Most of it just happened. It blew up and it was great. It just happens. That's when a show like that, it's just like when I did Kid Chris show, you know, it's just stuff would just happen every day. It would be out of control. And that, you know, he's still on regular radio now, and he's just amazing.
And what about the roasts? Because I've seen a lot of those too. The roasts were unreal in a lot of ways. You really knew how to lead those with a charge. How did you get about doing that? Or what led you to kind of being in charge of the roasts in that way?
Well, that was supposed to be like Miserable Men. It was supposed to be my own show. You know, and then like 3 days before the first roast, Gary calls and goes, Howard wants to do it live. And I'm like, live? I'm like, we suck in the morning, you know, and we didn't edit anything. Anything got messed up. And I'm not a good reader, you know, and especially in the morning. So it was kind of weird, but it was great. It was insane time. It was like, thank God I was only running it, so I can just bring people up whenever. But it was fun. It was a real fun time.
So you brought up Miserable Men. I actually found that show interesting a lot, even if it was on Sirius or if it's on Patreon now. How did that start, or how did that separate hour come to be? Like, did you and Shuli mesh beforehand, or how did that come to be?
Well, I did like an audition tape, and they played that on the air, and people liked it a lot. And they, the response. He would always ask for the response, so he would know if people liked it. And one time, me and Shuli would talk and go, we just said, just interview me, that we're starting the show, and it's on Howard 101. And he interviewed me like we got the okay to do the show. We never got the okay. Howard heard the interview and he goes, "Congratulations, guys." And that's how we got, you understand? We got the show by saying we had the show. And he just thought that maybe Tim gave us the show or something. I don't know, but nobody ever checked. And we went from 1 hour to 4 hours. So it was pretty amazing.
That is great. And I mean, I think I've heard over the years of the show that it's hard for any comedian to get a show on the channels or on his network at the time, right? That was like a sacred piece of real estate in a sense, right?
Yeah. Especially like he had to really like if you didn't have a really good show, he had to really like someone to put him on, Like I thought Riley Martin's show was amazing. I was so different, and I love that man. He was so entertaining just to even talk to.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I feel like the whole point of having the two channels, at least on the serious side, was to have multiple shows. And I was always surprised when yours was really the only secondary show that was on the channels. And I thought I was going to get to see other people from the show have shows. I don't know if this is an ego thing or not from Howard, but obviously he wants his show to be front and center.
No, but there wasn't a lot of people that could have done a show, really. The first idea was going to be me and Sal doing it, and then it was me and Shuli talked, and then we brought Florentine on at the beginning, and then it evolved into a bigger show where more people were coming in, and it was just so much fun.
Right, and the other fun stories I like to see, or at least I saw on YouTube, were the Killers of Comedy, those videos.
Yeah.
Now, how did that come to be? Because there were a lot of funny videos, a lot of funny content, especially you and Beetle, you and Ronnie, you and others. How did that come to be?
Well, that I just said, look, we were going to do a tour, and I guess I posted something, and Sequoia hit me up, and he goes, "I'm a promoter, dude." And I'm like, I never heard of him or anything. And he was very, he was there in my face. And I was like, all right, what's better than teaching somebody that knows not much about it, how the comedy side is going to work, than have somebody telling me how comedy should be done. You know what I mean? So it was good. It was good like that. And it was just, once it started getting taped, it was like, it's a piece of cake. When you have those characters, every night was good. Every night was crazy. Every night could have been bad. Anything was going on.
So was a lot of that. So I guess Howard brought the bits on the air because he really wanted to help bring I don't know if he wanted to help bring the Killers of Comedy up a level because it was content for the air. When Ronnie would fall asleep, that was one bit. And Shuli would wake him up with the horn or any of that stuff. Was Howard looking to just find the BS that happened behind the scenes, or was
that was what was entertaining? I mean, look, I can't say he was happy with us going on the road. You know what I mean? Because I knew we couldn't really use his name like on the thing, and people would put it up on the things, and he would. Yeah, but I understand that. But the content was great, and how can you not? He's not going to turn down something that's good to put on the air. He's just never going to do that, no matter what.
So once the transition happened, when you were not on the show, how long did it take to kind of get back on feet once you were not making the appearances, so to speak, on Howard's show anymore? Did it happen quickly? Did you just quickly start doing podcasting? Did you do video? How quick did it take
Well,
to
I was
transition?
doing podcasting when I was on the show. I was probably doing it. I think I might have started in 2008, 2006. I think I would go live. I'd be on Stickum, which was huge, and I was huge on Stickum because I would go to the top of the page every time I went on. Like the listeners would come in, and it would pop it to the front, and every time I went on, it was like that. So it was great. But yeah, I mean, I was going through things, with Xanax then that I had to work on that. It took me a long time to realize I had a problem because a lot of times, people tell you have a problem. It's like, especially when you're on Xanax, you're like, don't go against me. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to go against me, but they were trying to help. But you don't hear it when you're on that stuff, especially being on 6 milligrams a day. That's a lot.
No, I know, and I know for the sake of the show, a lot of it was comedy. But did you think it was a little too far when they were going after some of your habits or the Xanax? Did you think it was a
No.
little too far?
Okay. The whole thing is that I would bring up, everyone would know about it. Like I probably said, it's all about being honest, and that's what makes great radio.
Yeah.
So I know that the insanity is what works on that show, and it did back then. Now you're looking at a different thing. You looked at like, okay, when Sam Kinison was on, he was out of his mind. He's all coked out. He's doing whatever, bringing in hookers, stripper, whatever. But like, could we do that? No, it wouldn't get to that. We wouldn't be able to do that. And now you wouldn't be able to do what we did. So it does calm down after a while, but it was a crazy time. But you lived it, so you basically didn't feel any different. It's kind of crazy thinking about it.
No, that makes sense. I just thought sometimes it could be a little over the top, but I understand it's in the comedic game, so you're trying to keep everybody on their toes and entertained.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. I mean, believe me, when you're on a show like that, being a lunatic sells. Okay, you're going to get more appearances. You're going to make more money on the road. It was just a perfect time for it. It was like it was a really good run, and then it started slowing down a little near the end, and it just didn't seem the same anymore.
So, as you said, you do your show. Actually, can you tell me a little bit about Levyland since we started to talk about it before your show on YouTube? I'm curious to hear more about it.
Well, Levyland is just I've done this show, forget it, forever. You know what I mean? And then like now I have Rob Soul, who's not a comedian. It's just he's worked with me before, and I even brought him to a Boston station with me to do a show, and he just gets me. He's like, it's like having a wife. Just can't believe what you say. And then Chris Abels is from West Virginia, so he's got a great outlook on life. Like he's always, he's happy. He's got a dumb smile on his face because he doesn't, you know what I mean? He's not from here, Jersey or New York, and, deal with fucking craziness all the time. So it's a great thing. And like, it's all about us. It's not about anything else, It's basically about how our week went. And so much happens every week that it just keeps flowing.
Right. And with the way the podcast and the digital game is going, it's growing year by year. I'm assuming that you would think the podcast space is a much bigger space, so it's easier to get into it doing content every week. Would you say so? You like doing the weekly content? Or
yeah, I like to do it once a week, like we do Miserable Men now. We're going to do a few more with that, tape more, and put it out there because we're on Patreon and that. But like Levyland once a week, unless, if we had the budget, whatever we were making, I'd go every day with it, for an hour or two, because it's so easy. If you have something good to talk about in your life, it just flows, and everybody else, it happens somehow to them.
And actually, let's talk about Miserable Men now being on Patreon. So obviously, like you said, it started out as 1 hour, then it went to 4 hours on Sirius. Now it's on Patreon. Was it easy to did you have to get the name back, or how did that work when it was on Sirius, or you just went and just said, I'm doing it on Patreon?
We just never signed anything. I never signed anything. So I mean, I came up with it. I mean, so whatever, it's like if you got a problem, you'll make us bigger, and he doesn't want to do that. You know what I mean? He's a smart businessman.
So it was just more of a name transfer at that point. He just said, take the name. I don't want to.
No, he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. You know what I mean? That him not saying anything is basically him not doing anything. For you, like they won't mention my name at all. Like they cut things. You won't hear me on Sirius XM. You can only hear me on YouTube. But it's funny that you go through that much, but it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's crazy in your mind that you go through. It may not even be him. I can't see him being that crazy that he's making people go through everything to cut me out. But hey, man, if that's what it makes you happy, then do it. I don't care.
I mean, hopefully you're not going to the roots of the Stuttering Johns of the world who are suing the Sirius for everything.
Yeah, but I think that that didn't work, right?
No, it didn't work. But I'm just saying it's crazy. Yeah. Like, you know what? Like, it happens. You move on, and you move on.
Well, that's what it is. It was bad. My thing when I left, it was bad. It was awful. Okay, and I did a lot of it. At a certain point, I can point the finger at me. But the whole thing is that, what am I going to do? Live in the past? I love the past. I do love the past. I mean, it was the greatest time. If you put me, to talk about how it was great. It was unbelievable. It was the major leagues of entertainment at the time, forever, his show. And, how can I couldn't be upset over anything, truthfully.
Well, we'll move on from the show a little bit. Let's talk about you now. So what are you up to now? You're doing the comedy gigs. You're doing the shows. Mm-hmm. How's everything going now with you?
It's going good. I just I had my neck surgery last year. I was in a car accident, so I had my neck surgery. I worked on I had a lot of damage done to me. I worked on stuff to get rid of the migraines. I still got to deal with ankle and feet pain, but I'm working on that now too. It's like you work on everything. We did it for a year, working on everything, and then once they start fixing stuff, you find other stuff, and it just kept going like that. But now it's coming to an end, and hopefully, what I'm doing, I bought one of those tables that go upside down now, and it's actually helping my ankles and and feet, and I snap them all this. I do whatever I can to try to get that stupid feeling out of it.
And I'll get this question out of the way, but do you think it's kind of like Artie in a sense where his level rose so high that the pressure was getting? Did you see that with you at all, that the level was going so high that you felt the pressure to keep bringing the level higher up, and now that you feel like the boulder is off the back, it's a little more relaxed? Or
no, I like the craziness. I love being on the radio. I love doing stuff like that. Like I do stuff with Kevin Brennan a lot on his thing. He's a genius. He knows how to get to people. He dissects their thoughts when they say something that isn't true or whatever, and it's like watching a genius work. So it's like it's amazing, but like you love this stuff. This is what you live for. That's why I'm doing podcasts all the time. The more I do, the better I feel. The more busy I am. When you're laying around like a piece of crap, because that's what you're doing. You have to get out there.
No, that makes sense. And actually, I forgot to ask this before. How did you get into comedy? I'm curious in that regard. So where did that start? Because you've been in the game a long time, right?
Yeah. Since like 88, I believe.
Wow.
It was in, basically, we were Stern fans, We used to listen to Howard in the afternoon. And when he went to the morning, we'd listen, every morning. And I wasn't into comedy at all. I had no idea. I used to play in bands, and then I stopped, and I did some evil stuff. And then, like at the bar that we hung out in, my job was to make fun of the new people that we didn't know that would come in. So they wanted to fight us. So I would just bust their balls. So they wanted to fight us, and I was good at it, I guess. And my friend said to me, he goes, "You should try comedy because Jackie has this open mic at Rascals every Tuesday." And that's how I got into it. I mean, I just knew from listening to the Stern Show, I wasn't like a big comedy. I still don't watch comedy. I don't watch comedians, unless they're friends of mine. Like I watched Florentine's special on YouTube and I really enjoyed that. But like, I won't watch people. Like if somebody goes, "Oh, you got," why am I going to listen to it? I like to do what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody else is doing. That's the key. If you care what other people are doing, you're never gonna be great at what you do. If you always worry, "Oh, how come I can't?" I go and do it. I don't care.
No, that makes sense. And one other unique thing I'll ask is, so going back to Stuttering John for a second, I heard him on a podcast. He was asked, would he go back to the show if he was able to go back to the show? And I was kind of shocked when he said yes.
Really?
In some regards. If the show approached you to come back, would you go back, even if it was in a small capacity in some way, shape, or form?
I'd rather just talk, have even an email conversation with him and explaining what happened and not go back. You understand? I just want him to know that this is what happened. This is why I did this, and boom. So, but no, I mean, in other circumstance, I would go back, of course. You know what I mean? This is the top of the game. It still is, you might say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll just wrap it up on this. Just give you a chance to promote where you're going to be, your shows. So obviously, Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club, you're going to be there the 5th to the 8th, and then your New Year's Eve show. Now, what do you? You've done New Year's Eve shows before. What do you usually do during the New Year's Eve shows? Usually,
usually it's like 2 shows at a comedy thing. The first one is the early one, a lot more dead, and the second crowd is basically there for New Year's. There's like 3 comedians, and it's crazy, but it fits right into me because I like to bring that crazy energy and craziness, with the talking and all that, and just having fun. So I mean, it's a good night. Like the tickets will sell like boom, like now until the day of, boom, 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 and then it'll be packed. But who knows with this new Corona thing going around? If people are afraid, we've been talking about that. It's going to start. It's been affecting New York City, and it's going to continue to spread all over. So it's like you don't know. And we have to go to the city tomorrow. I'm doing the roast for Gino Bisconte. So this is going to be insane. So like, I'll see what the city looks like, but I know people are terrified,
Yeah, it's just unfortunately the way COVID is with all the cases going up, and hopefully everyone can stay healthy and we can go back to living normal life. I hope so at some point.
It would be nice. It would be nice to like just to not worry about anything. It's like it's too many people are getting it again that have been vaccinated are getting it, and no matter what, if you get it and you're in this entertainment, you're not working for 10 to 14 days because until it clears up. So basically, you cancel all your work and that's it. And you sit at home to get better. And, if you had the flu years ago, you'd probably work. I mean, I remember being sick and working and, in a lot of pain and working. But it's like this is like a different thing right now. So you don't know. Who knows? I mean, I might have had COVID. I mean, it said I didn't have it when I took a test at the store, but I had everything that seemed like it. And it was gone in like 4 days. It's like they don't even now. There is no such thing as you don't get COVID anymore. You get this new one. So, and how do you do that with the same test? It doesn't make so. See, there's too many things that just make me crazy about it. But I hate to see people die in that. It's just horrible. But you can't point to your point. You got to point your finger overseas. You can't point it here.
Do the comedy clubs give you a hard time? Like, do you have to test before you walk into the comedy clubs? How does that work behind the scenes?
No,
No.
no, no. You just nobody really bothers you. You're supposed to have everything. You're supposed to have a card in New York City. You know what I mean? You have
Yeah.
to have
No, that makes
whatever.
sense. And
Yeah, but even if you want a coffee or and a bagel to go in the store, you have to show it. Like you can't eat. You can't eat if you don't have a card. It's basically, I mean, but you can vote without a card. So I don't know what's going on. A lot of it makes no sense. How they control you.
no, it makes total sense. And I'll finish off on this one because I always ask this
Hmm.
comedian's question.
Hmm.
What do you think of cancel culture? Because I'm noticing that a lot more. Chappelle had it. I thought that was kind of ridiculous when it happened to him and a bunch of other comedians. It's getting harder and harder to do things on stage because, oh, I'm offended, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. How do you deal with the I'm offended crowd when you try to make a joke?
I really don't give a crap. I don't care if you're offended. I mean, I really have a problem where, if somebody's upset, but if they are, you'll see it. Like, it's not going to be they walk away. It's like, it's the end of the world, but it's only happened maybe once since COVID hit, and it was over something. It wasn't even my fault, really, and they realized it afterwards. They were just being a little hissy, and that's okay. But it's not going to affect me. I'm going to do what I want to do, I think you should it's like comedy is like something you should know who's there. Like if you see live band tonight and you like jazz and they're playing Metallica, this may not be for you. That's okay. You should know who's there. And that's the important thing because you just don't show up. I mean, say you wanted something a little aggressive and you got a juggler and you're like, what? I just paid for a juggler, truthfully.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense. I always say it doesn't make sense because nothing does make sense to me. What goes on and the way people think, and they get mad, and you see them at stores getting mad, and they're just losing their mind. They were already there to lose their mind. You understand? They were this close to losing their mind. This is what happened. This came and boom. Look at what's happening. Look at these people. The lady on the plane that smacked the old guy in the face because he was eating. She has no mask on. She's yelling at him. Don't travel then. If you're that worried, stay home because obviously you're not good at being out. You should be able to, people should be able to go out and travel and be able to have a good time without somebody coming up to them and preaching their bullshit, to you. And I'll never understand that. And I'll just laugh at him. I'll be like, get away from me. I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean that's why they make dials and podcasts and all different types of things. If you don't want to listen to something, just either turn the dial or don't listen. At this point,
yeah, there's something you can find. I mean, God, I try to find stuff on TV, and it's hard. If it wasn't for sports and certain and the murder channel, and I don't know what I'd be watching. There's so many channels now with so much nothing on it, and I'm like, why don't you give some crazy people an idea? Like, let them try a show and put together a real comedy thing or something that's really funny. Because I don't know what, you watch like Saturday Night Live and you're like, okay, this really isn't funny. And I'm like, I can write the whole show by myself and be better than 50 to 100 writers. And that's sad.
I mean
But
that show has been around for years. Yeah,
yeah, but you can do so. Why would you not take both sides? There's so much more you can make fun of.
right.
You can't just bash and bash and bash and bash. You have to take both sides. It's like even in podcast when I'm talking on the radio, I'll say something I'm totally against. By the end, I'm saying the good parts about it.
Right.
They call me two sides Bob. You know what I mean? Because I can see good in both, but you have to go both. You can't just go one way and pound it down. Then you're saying, I only want half the audience. This is what I want, half the audience, and that's it, because I want to piss off the rest. That's the stupid way to look at business.
Right. You have to cover both sides. I mean, it's kind of like what goes on in political media, because that's where, unfortunately, I worked for 4 years. Yeah. I worked in right-wing political radio. Not my choice, just where the job was in radio. And unfortunately...
No matter what it is, it's one or the other. There is no medium ground.
Right.
If you put up put a station that did both sides, you could say, oh, now I get it. But if you watch just one side, you're like, oh, they're a piece of crap. Oh, no, they're a piece of crap.
Right.
It's just what you watch. It's what is in, it goes into you.
It's kind of like the whole Fox versus CNN versus NBC. I watch this channel. You watch this channel. You're wrong. No, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. I mean, it is what it is. But
you can't win.
but Bob, thanks for spending all this time with me. I really appreciate it. Let me throw everything out there. Levyland on YouTube, Miserable Men on Patreon, doing stand-up at Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club January 5th to January 8th, and your New Year's Eve shows, at McGuire's Comedy Club in Long Island. And follow Bob on Twitter at Levy_sir. Bob, I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Anytime, Nick. Thank you for having me. This was fun.